everyone. Um, what's up? My name is Whitney, and it's so good to see you. Below, you'll continue to see closed captions. I am still learning to sign, um, and I'm still pretty bad at it. So I wanted to make sure that this was accessible, and every video that I do make will continue to be accessible to the deaf community. Same message as before to my hearing community. Please, 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 please do your best to try to integrate the deaf community into your everyday lives in one way or another. Very, very small ways make a difference, right? We tend to think about making, concerts and public education accessible to the deaf community, but I don't see a lot of it in social media. So I definitely want to make sure that if I am going to put content out there, that it at least, it's at least fair, and as reachable as possible, right? Especially within the topic of mental health, this is something that isn't just for those of hearing, right? I can only imagine what it's like, uh, being part of the deaf community and then maybe not having the resources or the equity in regards to mental health resources as everybody else, right? So uh, let's make a conscious effort, to really make that point and making just things more accessible to them. Now, today's topic. I have been so sorry. I keep like touching my face and I look crazy, but it's kind of itchy. So today's topic is so interesting to me. I was actually researching this maybe like 6 months ago. I go on YouTube and then I go down this like wormhole or black hole of information, and then I fall in love with psychology even more. Today's topic, if you haven't already seen by the title, is actually on DID, or Dissociative Identity Disorder. It was formerly known as personality disorder. Now, not many of you may be familiar with really what this disorder is. Um, Around 1 to 3% of the population is affected by DID. Okay. And I wanted to get into it because I did realize that there are a lot of movies out there that are again with the word I can't say it, sensationalizing certain mental health disorders, and DID is definitely one of them. The most recent movie that I can think of that was just put out there was Split. So if you've seen it and you were like fascinated by it and you're like, ooh, that is nuts, I can't believe that that guy went through that. There were so many personalities. So if you're interested in learning about the actual functions of DID, then stick around for this because it really is extremely interesting. Now, I wanted to make sure that, of course, with everything mental health, that we did really try to review some of the stigmas, right, of what people believed about DID, and what the reality is, right? We can talk a little bit about movies, and then we can figure out exactly if, there's some information out there that is accurate, and we can go ahead and zero out whatever isn't true at all, okay? So, DID is fascinating to me because it is one of those things that really just shows like how powerful the brain is. Okay, so DID usually happens at a very young age. It starts. Okay, so as a child, you start to develop your personality. I believe up until the age of 7 or 8. I think the max was like 9 years old. And if you are exposed to trauma continuously, um, on a consistent rate, extreme trauma, um, before that age, it's extremely challenging for the child to be able to form one personality. And I know that you may be thinking of personality in the sense of Like, oh, I had my emo phase, or I had an emo personality, or, there's like three personalities in me because I'm girly and then I'm a top. No, that's not what we're referring to. What I'm talking about is facing some serious, serious trauma to the point where the individual can no longer conceptualize it. And in order to survive that situation, they have to almost separate themselves from the situation or disassociate. Um, I'm gonna put out a little warning now before you continue to watch the video. There is gonna be some very dramatic things that I'm going to mention. They might be a little bit triggering, so please, continue to listen with caution. I'm not going to go into complete detail because I don't think it's necessary, but I am going to get into a little bit of the specifics of what I mean in regards to trauma. Okay. So I watched a couple of different interviews, documentaries about different individuals who have been diagnosed with DID. Now, as I was saying before, this happens typically during childhood. And in every single case that I looked into, that was exactly the case. So, um, growing up, some of them had abusive parents. Usually, there would be sexual abuse involved at a very young age. Um, One of the cases, I believe, was around the age of 3 years old that the sexual abuse began. Um, and it was so extreme and so torturous and so consistent that they needed to have surgery to repair their rectum and their diaphragm. Now, you could only imagine the amount of not just the physical trauma and the pain, but the mental, constraint and the mental trauma that you generally do feel when you're in this situation, right? Especially when you're a child of that age, right? Let's keep in mind, let's say from the age of 1 to about 6 years old, right? So usually we develop those personalities, let's say from 7 to 9. You're going through this from the age of 1 to 6, right? And I mean, you're still a baby. You're still trying to learn the world, right? And the only people that you have really that you may look up to, that you rely on, that take care of you, right? Because there isn't much independence, are your parents. And when one of your parents or both of your parents, are the ones who are causing you this kind of pain, how do you escape it, right? How do you advocate for yourself? You don't. You can't, right? At that age, you really can't. You're stuck in it, and you kind of experience it, and I could imagine you hope for the best. Um, in these cases with DID, what the individuals do is they construct a system, and that's what a collection of alters means. And alters are the personalities, right? So let's say that my name is Whitney, right? I'm going through this traumatic situation at a very young age, and I can no longer withstand what is happening to me. And the only way that I can continue to survive this and really bear the situation as a whole is by creating an alter. And let's call her or him, because it can be of either sex. Let's call him Jimmy, right? My second alter is Jimmy. Jimmy is part of the system now, and his job is to protect me, right? Let's say I have this mentality that, men are strong and men are protective and they can protect you from anything. So while I'm being sexually abused by, let's say, my father, instead of Whitney being present during that particular moment, in order to protect myself to be able to continue going, I bring Jimmy forward, or Jimmy brings himself forward, right? Because these altars are meant as almost like the layers of protection. So now I'm no longer Whitney. And Jimmy steps forward and takes the brunt of the abuse. And he's the one who builds the memories of the abuse. And now, maybe when the abuse is done with, or my father is done with whatever he needs to do, Jimmy takes care of me, consoles me, maybe puts me to bed, gives me a toy, um, puts me at ease. And then when I feel safe again, I come forward as myself, Whitney, right? Um, and really the fascinating thing is that it's not just one alter, right? It's not a specific set of alters that can exist in one living body. I watched documentaries of an array of different women and men, and I think the maximum that I saw was 2,500 alters. Let that sink in. 2,500 alters. Okay. I'm making an emphasis on this number because I feel like some of you may be like, oh, that's dope. Like you like create friends and you have a good time. Like having DID isn't a good time. Between these switches, right? Between me being Whitney, experiencing the traumatic moment, and then Jimmy coming forward, right? There's something called amnesia. And that's why I said that Jimmy is the one who takes the brunt of the abuse and collects all of the memories. Because I confront or come forward as Whitney, right? And when I switch, I have no recollection, right? I can maybe be on the background. Some of them kind of mentioned it as like co-piloting, right? Your body being a car. Maybe Whitney is in the back seat when Jimmy is in the front and he's driving the car. Sometimes you're able to see where you're going, but you have really no control over the steering wheel. And sometimes you don't have control at all, right? So if it's an extreme situation where you just cannot um, withstand it, then your system may not be functioning in that sense where you're allowed to co-pilot. It may just be your mechanism to say, I don't want to hear, see, smell anything, right? And there can be alters who are created to specific roles and specific jobs, right? So let's say Jimmy, his job was to take the brunt of the abuse, right? He kept all the memories. Then I created another alter, um, Jennifer. Jennifer is going to be the alter that is going to give the rest of the alters their roles and gonna almost like tap them on the shoulder and say, okay, it's your time to face this particular moment. Let's go ahead and take care of this for Whitney and let's make sure that she is safe. Okay, I can build a third alter. Let's say we call them Paul. And his particular role is to make sure that Whitney doesn't get any of the scents that are around her when she is being abused, right? Um, and that's extremely important, especially because scents are so triggering sometimes, right? Just especially even me myself now, through certain scents, I can recollect memories. Right? I can't speak English. um, so these particular roles are extremely important. And it really does come down, again, to the safety of the individual. And when I say I create, right, it's not like the individual sits down and it's like, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make up another person. It starts to become something, they become this system, right? They are this functioning, well-oiled machine. And sometimes there's a need for more than 30, more than 40, 50, 60, right? Depending on the situation. It's really a way for coping. And it's incredible because I was like kind of stranged out by it at first. And I'm being very honest, right? I want to do this for a living. When I was first looking into DID, I was a little bit almost like shocked, right? I was like, wow, like, how does this happen? Like, is there something in the brain? And then I started to think about all these movies and like, is that real? Like, do you have super, like, how does this work, right? Like, there's no way this can happen. But it really is just the same. I mean, if we think about PTSD in soldiers, right, who come back from war, from active duty, and if PTSD isn't dealt with, it can lead to something called dissociation. Dissociation is usually, they're brought back by, let's say, a loud noise, right? And instead of, oh, it's a loud noise that happened across the street, it's that loud noise triggered something in my memory, in my mind, that just brought me back to war, right? And in some cases, whether they are experiencing anger or maybe violent behavior, it's because they're dissociating, right? So they're trying to survive. So it's a lot like that, right? It's a good way to kind of explain it, because it really is, it comes down to survival, right? It's just that as a kid, you've got this imagination, you've got a way, really the only way to protect yourself, right? And it would be through DID. Now, as I was doing this research, I'm interested in the brain, the biology of it, the way that it functions, right? In the last video, when I was talking about emotions, right, and kind of dealing with past traumas, I did mention that although some emotions that we feel and that we go through, we experience, are sometimes due to chemical imbalances in the brain or chemical reactions, right? But not always. And this is one of these situations. Now, these individuals have, at least the ones that I looked into, and I'll leave some information below as always, so you guys can kind of dive in if you want to. But they've been tested, and there isn't anything biologically really that is specific to DIT. However, really interesting thing is, one of the women that I was looking into, let me get her name for you really quick. Um, she she's a woman with 2,500 alters. Okay, her name is Jenny. There's a video out there called Jenny's Army. I think it may have been made into a movie or documentary, but um, Jenny was working with a psychiatrist. Okay, and he was like the first doctor to ever believe her. Okay, they did some testing. So what he ended up doing, his name was Dr. George Blair Wist. What he ended up doing was he would sit Jenny down and he would connect her to an EEG machine. It's a machine that reads brain waves or brain activity. And after getting to know Jenny after a while, obviously you build a rapport. Your alters become comfortable with certain people if they do, decide to front. And he was able to sit in a room with her and take a look at the brain activity while she was switching. And the interesting thing is that there was changes in the brain activity. So as she was going from herself, Jenny, to her 3-year-old alter, there were changes in not just the EEG reads, but also in the tension in her face. So we all portray ourselves a certain way, right? We have our mannerisms. And a huge part of it is our face, right? The way that we speak, the way that, we make eye contact, things of that nature, the way we blink, how often we blink, how hard, the way that we move our eyebrows. All of that makes us very unique, right? And as she would switch to the 3-year-old alter that she had, the tension in her face changed. So her forehead would get looser, her jaw would tighten, her heart rate may increase or decrease depending on the alter. So there are very specific things that you can see scientifically, can be measured, that there's a difference between Jenny and all her other alters, right? Which is fascinating because for something that you can't necessarily test, right? Like you can't do blood work to test it. You can't do like a brain scan and see, brain's degenerative. We see there's valuable clues of DID, right? Or evidence of DID. It's really interesting to see that it is still something that affects the body physically. Now, to blow your mind even further, which is the part that blew me away, um, one of the really interesting things about this really is that every alter can speak a different language. They can have a different accent. They can write with a different hand. They all have different handwritings, different skills and abilities. And this blew my mind, right? Because if you're somebody who's like skeptical and you don't really understand, or you think that people are being, like extreme or they're faking, this is an incredible way to really be able to showcase to somebody, right? Like, no, I'm this person, right? And it comes down to the belief of the individual who's been diagnosed with DID, right? Because it's just like faith in a sense, right? And obviously, faith isn't caused by trauma, so not comparing in that sense, but it's almost like somebody questioning your belief, right? If you believe, why do you believe in God if you've never seen them? In that sense, right? How do you ask somebody who solely believes that there are 2,500 different personalities in them? How do you ask them if they're real? How do you question if they're real? You know what I mean? There's just no way. There's no way because they believe in these altars. And the craziest part is like, I was able to see on video, right? I was able to see journals of these altars, right? Where I was able to see, okay, well, the person that they're protecting, right? We're in split with like Kevin or something. Let's say Kevin had a specific handwriting or he's left-handed. When he writes straight, right? He has a specific pattern to his handwriting. And then he switches over to Patricia, right? And she's right-handed and she writes at an angle where her letters are leaning to the right or to the left. Look, these are very, very serious changes and they align very well because they align with the specific personality, right? Going back to Jenny, there was a specific part in the video that I was watching that showed one of her alters. I forgot his name, unfortunately. I will find it and link it below somewhere. But he was in his teens, and I mean, I wish I could like insert a clip to show you guys, but I can, like I said, I can include it down below and kind of put the benchmark kind of for you guys to just go straight to it. But he played basketball really well, and he could shoot free throws like without even facing the basket. Like that, he made every single one of them. Okay, and of course, you see Jenny doing it, right? But this is that particular alter who has that skill. And Jenny is a grown woman, right? She's very, very highly educated. So I also don't want you to think that having DID can necessarily stop a person from living a full life. It is challenging, as I said before. It's not fun. It's not a game. Um, it's a lot to deal with, especially with the amnesia and the losing of the memory. And, if you're switching, so you're like making yourself breakfast and you switch midway and then you come to again and you're in a different city, like it's overwhelming. But I also don't want you to think that it's limiting in that sense, right? Of course, it can be in the beginning stages. Maybe you don't really understand what it is that you're going through or what's happening, or you feel crazy because nobody around you deals with this situation, right? It can absolutely be a lot, especially if the root of the problem isn't dealt with, right? But in Jenny's case, I mean, I believe she had her bachelor's degree in psychology and she was prepping to get her doctorate's degree. I mean, she was on it and she had a full life. And at the end of the video, it was more of a time for her to start fresh. She actually covered a little bit on the video how she held her father accountable for the things that he did to her, took him to court, and was able to win using her 2000 watch. Like, of the 2,500, I believe there's only 3 alters that were present for the hearing, and they each gave their account of what happened. She wrote an entire dissertation, a statement, that she handed to the police, and she won. And he's in prison. So that's an awesome win, right? A lot to navigate. again, it's super fascinating, right? It just goes to show like what the brain, is really, really capable of. And again, there's a lot of stigma around it, right? People believe it's not real. People believe it's exaggerated. Um, they watch stupid movies that show things like The Beast, right? And that's like a superhero movie, right? So, yes, I mean, DID, sure. Like, do I have this thought in my mind that it could potentially be a way into using the brain in a way that we normally don't? I think so, absolutely. But I mean, it's the cause of putting someone in extreme distress, right? So, like, how much stress, what type of stress would you, how do you calculate that, right, for that to happen? I don't know. And be so cruel to even make that a test, or study of any sort. But no, it's not going to lead to extreme violence. It's not going to lead to somebody crawling on a ceiling or eating people's guts, or being serial killers. It's not. It's very unlikely, very, very unlikely that people who are diagnosed with DID become violent. Um, like I said, it's challenging to deal with as it is, and it does not need all of the extra stigma that it deals with for people to be able to live their lives freely and navigate. Right? They've already suffered so much. Um, I'm going to link below a couple of documentaries that I think I've gauged correctly in regard to like accuracy. If you're interested in kind of getting to know a little bit more about DID, seeing the stories of people who've been diagnosed with it. For my folks, older generation, you may have heard of Truddi Chase. I think her movie's called Voices Within, if I'm not mistaken. I have seen interviews with her and Oprah, and they were so emotionally overwhelming. So I do want to forewarn you guys before you go down this loophole, but I think it's worth it. You don't know who is dealing with DID around you. You don't know if you'll ever cross paths with somebody who does. And I think that the best way to build compassion and to build empathy towards people who are dealing with different mental disorders is to educate ourselves. Part of the reason I do these things, right? I'm sure you didn't wake up today and decide to learn about this, but it really is intriguing to really know and to see how it affects the human body and the human brain, how it can affect the way that people with DID interact, how their system is built, the number of different alters. And I think that's something that I'm interested in kind of looking into a little bit further. But that will be it for today, for today's episode. I haven't made up my mind yet on what it is that we'll be talking about next week, but I'll let you know maybe this weekend at some point. I will continue to focus on specific mental diagnosis, so we can all educate ourselves a little bit more. We can learn together. And if you guys, of course, have any questions or recommendations, please let me know. Feel free to comment down below. As always, this will be posted on Facebook. It'll be posted on Instagram, and it will go up onto the Witty Titty Podcast on iTunes and Spotify. So please keep an eye out for that. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and I will see you next time.